Hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic, and welcome back to Let's Do a Brew. Today I'm joined by a guest, one of my first returning guests. It's Chase, aka Mana Curves. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you for finally letting me return. I know that I was on probation, but I earned my way back in through good behavior and a compliment.
Yeah, I grounded you after the last show and your poor showing there.
Yeah.
But I am very excited to have you back. For anybody that doesn't know, why don't you let us know who you are and where we can find you?
Yeah, so my name is Chase, also known as Mana Curves Online. You can find me everywhere at Mana Curves. I stream Paper Commander and Commander deck building on my Twitch channel. I make videos on TikTok. I post a little bit on Instagram for funsies, and I also post way too much on Twitter. And you can also find articles that I have written for Star City Games.
Yeah, we can find you just about everywhere lately, and that's it. Like I love it. I love your content. I'm a big fan. Not only am I a friend, but I'm a fan. And I think a lot of people should be following you on TikTok because you do some great stuff at your LGS. You release some good things. So I'll make sure that all your socials pop up here
Mhm.
at the bottom. But one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is that you have been calling yourself the Secret Lair sommelier lately. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, so that is a self-appointed title to make me feel important. I really like Secret Lairs. I've been collecting not all of them, but some of them for a while now. I have a commander deck made entirely out of Secret Lairs from, the commander all the way down to the basics. And so I, really pay attention to the product and really enjoy the product as a whole. So that's why I like to call myself that.
What is so interesting to you about these secret layers?
I really like layers for a multitude of reasons. I think it's really a good avenue to introduce reprints without throwing off the balance of a set, which I think is very important, especially when you're coming at things from like a design standpoint. Because there are a lot of things that need reprints, but it's just like how do you introduce that into a meta where it could be really disgusting and impact people way too much.
Hmm.
I also really love the art of Secret Lairs. I think it's really fun to push the boundaries of what a magic card is supposed to look like, and I know that, a lot of people don't like that, but I think it's a really good place for it because you're keeping it within a box, so to speak, so you can, like, do what you wanna do within that box, but typically it doesn't, like, leak into, like, standard sets or the like, and I just think it's kind of fun to, like, have weird, deranged art and just kind of get to showcase that. It's like a little art gallery.
And it's something that people can choose to engage with or not to engage
Mhm.
with, which is really important because putting some of these kind of reprints in standard sets, like you mentioned, even though Wizards is playing around with that with the special guest lists
Mhm.
lately, this is a great way for them to test out new artists, see how users engage with it, and put out products that are for very specific audiences like yourself who just like the weird art styles or the difference in this, or somebody whose favorite, say, comic book artist or alternate media artist gets a
Mhm.
chance to draw a magic card or illustrate a magic card. I think it's a great way for people to find a greater niche within the game that really speaks to them, that resonates with them.
I think there's just something really fun about it that's, like, really exciting. I think I just don't know how to explain it other than I really like being able to, like, push and see because like, back in the day, like, the inventions from Kaladesh was, like, the craziest thing you would see, and now that's one of the most normal things you would see, I think, compared to what we've received lately, and, some of it's a mix, some of it's, like, a hit or miss, but then again, like, art is subjective, and I like that with Secret Lairs, these aren't new cards, these are cards that have already been printed before, so you have the option to choose what you want, either through the premium or, by, like, going to your LGS and grabbing a single.
Yeah, and you mentioned the treatments that we're getting in standard sets right now or regular sets right now,
Mhm,
and how we're getting this kind of out of the box treatment pretty often
mhm,
in these new sets. I like that some of the secret layers take those kind of treatments and apply them to creatures and cards that can't be in the standard set, but it makes sense for that frame for. That's a
mhm.
really neat take too.
Yeah. There it's always so interesting because it's very hit or miss for me when it comes to like borders and certain treatments. Like I'm not a huge fan of the wanted poster treatment, but when I saw it in person, it grew on me. And I had a conversation with someone at my LGS about how I really enjoyed having that be, like as your commander. Like if you have a commander with the wanted poster, that just feels so thematic. And so like seeing that in like this most recent drop, there's like a handful of like wanted poster ones. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like if you have like a Kalidas or whatever, you have a cool wanted poster. Or even like, Dak Faden can't be your commander, but like it's really cool to see him on a wanted poster because it just feels so flavorful. So I really like that we kind of get to have that like as a little treat.
Yeah, it makes sense for the greatest thief in the multiverse, rest
Hmm.
in peace, to have a wanted poster
Yeah.
for his card. I think that that's the kind of application of this that I really like to see. And the on a similar note, the dossier frame from Murders at Karlov Manor
Hmm.
didn't resonate with me until I saw it in person.
Hmm.
And that's when I said, okay, this kind of looks neat. Like this is much cooler than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And seeing that kind of application potentially to cards in the future that it makes sense for is a kind of chocolate in your peanut butter kind of scenario.
Yeah. I think it's really cool, especially now that we are getting such thematic sets because we've Magic has always been incredibly thematic. Don't get me wrong, but like there's just like a certain flavor to like a murder mystery or like a certain flavor to like a yeehaw kind of set that you get to kind of like play with in a situation where you normally wouldn't. So like I think with like original Ravnica, if we had done like MKM, but it was not a murder mystery set, it wouldn't make sense to have a border like that. It would just be something completely different or maybe even something like completely like white bread or whatever, which isn't bad, but like I like that they're playing with things and testing things out.
Yeah, otherwise it'd seem entirely out of left field to have a dossier style border in like a Phyrexian set.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense. But here in our regular sets, we get something that fits with the theme of the set. And then in the Secret Layers, we get maybe an extension of that, a couple of reprints in that frame that really does make sense.
Mhm.
And on the Secret Layer note, this year, 2024, the year that we're recording this, we've got a couple of Secret Layers that have recently been announced and recently been released
Mm.
with some really cool reprints in them. And I want to focus on some of the legends from these sets because I don't know about you, but for me, seeing a Secret Layer with the reprint of a legend in it makes me really want to go back and revisit those commanders. Makes me want to brew around them and really puts them top of mind for me. How do you feel about that?
I agree actually wholeheartedly with that, and I find it very interesting because looking at this, I really like when you get like little packages, and also to kind of do it on the flip. For example, like I wasn't a huge fan of the Street Fighter Secret Lair, and that's fine. It's not my thing, but I liked that they made in universe versions of them. And when I was scrolling through Scryfall one day, I saw it and I was like, how come I've never seen this card? This is insane. And like, there was not a connection in my head. So when I got to see it in a different art, it just connected for me. And I think that just happens no matter what, whether it's like, UB or not, or like a layer or not. Like seeing things printed that way, I think are beautiful. Like even with the Diabolic Diorama layer, I purchased it because I wanted to have a foil aura shards because I'm like, that seems like a pretty good investment in my opinion. Um, and Carador is in there, and in my head, Carador is kind of like, the commander of days of old, ye old commander, precon commander. And I've never really had an interest in him. And even now I'm still like, I'm probably not gonna build him, but I just love the way he's depicted, and it makes
Mhm.
me have a greater interest in it.
Yeah, and that harkens me back to the first time that I saw a Secret Layer, and it really reminded me of an older card, and that I should go back and revisit. And that was Toshiro Yumazawa.
Yeah.
Way back when they released, I think one of the first rounds of Secret Layers, they reprinted Toshiro Yumazawa, the first reprint since the original printing in Betrayers of Kamigawa. And it, for a lot of people, myself included, it was the first time that they were seeing this legend.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of reignited interest in this commander. And that's one of the things that I really like about these Secret Layers is that for newer players, it might be dredging up a Carador that maybe they've never seen
Mhm.
because it's from the original Commander product from over 10 years ago
Mhm.
at this point. And it's the reigniting of some of these interests, the you don't know what you don't know kind of
Yeah.
scenario, where you might never have heard of these because you've never dug into uh, uh, Commander in these color combinations, or you've never seen somebody play it at a table, and it sparks that joy, that sparks that interest.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I actually have friends who will not run a certain version of a card because they don't like the way the color of like the rarity symbol looks with the art, or maybe they don't like the way the set symbol looks. And so I think it's kind of interesting to kind of like provide a sort of like charcuterie board of like different variations. I think is really fun because I think the shooting star is very inoffensive and I find it to be the main issue with my wallet. So I thoroughly enjoy it actually.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of bling when it comes to my decks. I don't
Mhm.
need a foil version of everything, but
Mhm.
if I can get my commander in a showcase frame
Mhm.
or a unique frame or a reskin, I'll likely go for that
Yeah.
over the standard border treatment of it.
It just makes it feel more special. It makes it feel more like customized, if that makes any sense.
Exactly, exactly. The same way that you choose the color of your sleeves or your play mat or the color of your dice, I think having options for the treatment for your commander is a great way for you to put your own spin on a deck.
Oh, totally.
So, looking at the most recent Secret Lair drops, let's start with the Equinox Super Drop.
Yeah.
And we'll just talk about the legends in here, but the Fallout Vault Boy drop has Vault Boy Cap Collector, which is a reskin of maybe one of the most reviled legends
Mhm.
in the game. It's Grand Arbiter Augustin the Fourth. How do you feel about this treatment and how do you feel about this legend?
It's so interesting to me because I am definitely like this, this kind of like play style is definitely not my steez. It's not something that I actively reach for, but I really do love seeing this kind of treatment. I've been really hardcore playing Fallout 4 lately, and I've just been really enjoying, the immersion of that. And so to see like, Vault Boy and stuff like that, I actually really love it. I also think it just looks nice. It looks so clean. It looks beautiful. It's a good package because I remember seeing people online talk about how this is like a good like starter package into like stacks. And while I hate stacks, I do agree that this is like a good little package to kind of intro you into this, especially if you're like someone who's into Fallout, but you don't necessarily know how to play Magic. You literally have like a tiny little baby starter kit kind of handed to you. And I really like that.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. Not only would you want to maybe pick this up for the Grand Arbiter, but if you want Baby's First Stacks kit, this
Mhm.
is a good secret layer with Sphere of Resistance, Trinisphere,
Yeah.
Winter Orb, all packed in. I mean, your friends are going to hate you, but it's a great way to grab some of these, honestly, in a lot of cases, pretty expensive pieces
Yeah.
too, in a
Yeah.
single drop. You mentioned the art style as well.
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of Fallout and the Fallout art style. How clean it is, like you mentioned, the bright colors. And often when you see cards like this in Magic, especially artifacts, you
Mhm.
don't often get the bright colors. You don't get that kind of pop.
Mhm.
You get more of the grays, the steel, the metal, the darker colors. This is eye-catching and very prominent. I like it a lot.
I agree, especially one thing I forgot to mention earlier about like when you asked me why I like Secret Lairs is I know I said the art, but specifically the colors, and I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like Magic nowadays, and this isn't like to say this is a bad aspect of it, but like we're really locked into sort of like a serious kind of like, at times gritty. And when I say dark, I don't mean like, you know, sad or angry or evil. I mean like actual like dark colors a lot of the times. So it's really nice to see what I like to call quote unconventional colors in Magic. Like I like seeing pinks and a lot more,
Mhm.
oranges and weird bright colors, mixed together. Um, and if I had purchased this layer, I've come to discover I'm a huge foil fan with this particular layer. If I did purchase it, I actually probably would have gotten it in non-foil because I feel like sometimes the foil can cloud the art. And this is one where I really want to be able to just like see those like colors and crisp lines.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I opened up some of the Surge foils
Mhm.
from Fallout. Search foils are great in some treatments, but when you get the Vault Boy art style with
Mhm.
Surge foil, it muddies it up a lot,
I
which
agree.
actually really detracts from it.
Yeah. It definitely does, and this is coming from somebody who loves foils. I love foils, but even with this most recent drop, I purchased one, layer non-foil because I'm like, I just wanna be able to have that art and, like, look at it.
Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 10,
Mhm.
how likely are you to build around Grand Arbiter?
Probably a 2, and it's not because, like, I hate it or anything. It's just it's not my kind of play style, and I definitely feel like this would be like a one game kinda thing where I play it for one game and then I go, "Okay, I'm bored." It's definitely not for me, but I love it.
All right, so let's jump to the next secret layer drop from the Equinox Super drop
Mm,
that has a legend in it. We're going to skip over a couple of here for our listeners out there that don't have legends in them because we're just going to talk about the legends. But let's go to the Phoebe Wall
mhm.
drop, which has a Layla Artful Provocateur in it.
Yeah.
Uh, this is a very unique art style. You spoke about the art styles really pushing the boundaries of what a magic card looks like. I
Mhm.
think that this drop does that to a T.
I actually disagree in the sense that this out of all of the ones we've seen, this one feels the most in Magic to me in
Uh-huh.
terms of, like, energy and vibe, and don't get me wrong, I love this. This was the layer I actually purchased in a non-foil because originally I just wanted to frame it and display it, but since then I've had a couple of pieces I've used. Um, I love everything about the art in this layer. I think it's perfect. I think it's I mean, like, I bought it with the intention of framing it. So
Mhm.
that I think that's like an indicator of my enjoyment of it for sure.
Yeah, I think the medium used on these cards, while it's I agree with you, the vibe is very magic. It's very fairyland.
Mhm.
It's very fantasy setting.
Mhm.
I think this is not an art style you would ever see in a regular print
Yeah.
magic card.
Yeah. Maybe in like the early 90s.
Well, yeah, maybe in like alpha, beta, you'd see something like this, where some of the art on alpha and beta cards look like they were pencil crayon on
Yeah, yeah,
lined
yeah, yeah.
paper drawn,
Yeah.
right? I'm looking at you, some of the circle of protections out there. But this one strikes me because it is very colorful, it's very bright, it's very playful, and the Alayla in particular is a
Mhm.
great take on the character. We've seen Alayla reprinted a couple of times now. She seems to be reprinted in a lot of precons
Yeah.
lately too. How do you feel about getting a secret layer drop for a legend that's been reprinted several times already?
I'm so glad you said that because I've written about this a few times in like Twitter threads and like articles and stuff. But I will say I am disappointed that Alayla was the commander. Not because she's a bad commander, but because she's been reprinted so many times. Not only that, but my big thing is like, yeah, if you're reprinted a lot, it's whatever. You know, that means you're a fun, popular card or you're a good card or easily accessible or easy to understand. My biggest issue is that this legendary creature has already been printed as a secret layer before. And so to
Mhm.
get it reprinted again as a layer, to me makes me a little like frustrated is too strong of a word, but it's just like I wish we could have seen something else. And this has happened, and I'm sure we'll talk about it soon, but like this has happened with even the most recent drop. There's been, I want to say, like maybe 4 or 5 cards that have been printed in layers before. Even in this current drop we're talking about, the Equinox drop, you have stuff like I think Fabled Passage was one of the lands, and like that land one that's been printed as a layer before. It's just, like, stuff like that that I'm like, I really wish we could have seen something new.
Mhm. It does seem like a lot of wasted potential to get another secret layer printing of a card that we've already seen secret layer printings
Yes.
of, or that we can pick up for 50 cents, or we got in our latest precon. We really want to see this kind of treatment for, like we were saying, legends that people have never heard of before
Yeah.
or might never have been able to get their hands on before. It sparks that interest in the older cards, and really dredges up that potential to brew around something. Seeing Alayla for the fourth time, I'll add her to my stack of 6 or 8 of them
Yeah.
that I have right now, makes it feel a lot less special.
Yeah. I really agree. And again, I look at this and I look at the other Secret Lair printing of Alayla, and I'm like, I definitely prefer this one. So, like, again, I'm never gonna be mad at seeing different takes on art because especially the original Secret Lair version is probably the most opposite of this you could ever get. It's like a band poster one that they did at a
Mhm.
MagicCon. But like I just really I like Secret Lairs being used as an avenue for reprints that we might not necessarily see too often. And so I want them to like expand into to to the unknown or something older. I mean, like I know we'll talk about it again in a second, but like we got Corona, which is an old as dirt commander that I never
Mhm.
thought we would see printed in a Secret Lair. And so to get that, I'm like, that's kind of what I want to see. Something out there, you know?
So on a scale of 1 to 10,
Mm.
how likely are you to build a Layla again?
I would probably say if I'm only looking at this layer, I would probably say like a 6.
Mm.
The art really sways me. I just think there's something so special about it, and it's bright, it's happy, and it fits more into a play style that I feel is pretty chill, also pretty affordable, at least in my opinion. A lot of artifacts and enchantments have been printed into the ground. A lot of fairy pieces have been printed into the ground. I think that this is probably one I would reach for before, say, like, Vault Boy.
Now, next up from the Equinox Super Drop is the Diabolical Dioramas one.
Mhm,
This one is a crowd favorite.
mhm,
The people were absolutely going crazy over the art in this one because it might not be entirely noticeable on the cards themselves, but these are all 3D art. These are all physical diorama arts
mhm.
on this. That is wild to me.
Yeah, I love it. I this is what I mean when I say that I love Secret Lairs because you get to experience stuff like this. And I want to say like, like about time. And the reason why I say is because I remember when I was like 10, Pokemon had been doing little clay arts for some of their
Mhm.
Pokemon. So they've been on this for a hot minute. And so us getting to experience that I think is really exciting because I love that because Pokemon has never been really afraid to like do the weird thing with art. I mean, Pokemon actually has like crochet
Mhm.
as some of their cards. And so like I'm hoping we'll see some more stuff like that in the future. But when I look at this, I'm like, I love it. I like the way they previewed it too with the little stop motion pieces. I think it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And this drop gives us, like we mentioned before, Carador Ghost Chieftain.
Mhm.
For some players that aren't as enfranchised as you and I, this might be the first time people are seeing Carador, which is one of the original Commander Precon box legends.
Mhm. I really I like this because like the old art, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with that original art. Not a single thing. I think it's beautiful. I think it's haunting. Like if you showed that to me and you were like, you're gonna get this tattooed on you, like if someone like was like, you're forced to do this, I wouldn't be upset. But I think there's just so much like personality to this one that excites me. I love it a lot, especially it kind of makes me think of like Coraline specifically. There's just
Mhm.
something so organic about it. Like you can tell it was just made by human hands. And I love that.
And I think that that is great. It because it's done in this actual 3D art diorama style,
Mm,
it does evoke those stop motion films,
mm,
like the Corpse Brides, like the Coralines.
mm,
And I think that it captures the fact that this is a ghost centaur
mhm,
really, really well with the pale background and the spooky trees.
mhm.
It's fantastic. And honestly, from an art standpoint, really gets the point across in a way that the original art, while the original art certainly captures a vibe,
Mhm.
this one recontextualizes it entirely.
I agree because you have just like that weird, almost like glow in the dark green that I think looks so good when you depict it like this. And it also, in a very similar vein with like the Pip Boy thing, this is also a bit of a package. This is like a graveyard Abzan Commander package because you have like Carador, you have Fiend Artisan, Gravebreaker Lamia, and like Aura Shards. So I think it's just like it's a good like here's an intro to kind of get you started into this, and I mean I love it.
These are some of my favorite secret layers that have a concise theme to it, where
Mhm.
all of the cards in it can go in the same deck.
Yes.
Because even with the Phoebe Wall one with Alayla, all of the cards in it are in Alayla's color identity. So
Mhm.
you can very much make an Alayla deck and include all of those cards in it. Same with the Grand Arbiter one, because Grand Arbiter is the only colored permanent
Mhm.
in that entire super drop. or in that entire drop rather. And Carador is the legend, and everything else falls within that Abzan color identity.
Mhm.
So this is very much a buy this layer, have a start to a commander deck.
Yeah.
I like that approach a lot because the reason why some people grab these is I've never seen that legend before. I want to build them.
Mhm.
Or that is my commander. This gives me cards for that deck.
Yeah. This was one of the layers that I purchased. I only purchased 2 layers from this drop. And while I really wanted like the special layer, ultimately I decided against it because while it's I think a phenomenal spread of cards, I would only end up quite literally only using one. And that's like SPECIAL. Sorry, 7 cards. It's 7 cards and only using one of them. Whereas like, using all of them feels leads to a less like feels bad situation because you're like, oh man, I feel guilty spending this money. I'm only using one thing. With these packages, you can use pretty much everything.
Yeah, and I think that that's a fantastic point. Buying a secret layer for just one legend and not using any of the other cards in
Mhm.
the deck, having them just sit around in a binder, taking up space, or sitting in a pile somewhere, really does feel like a waste of these really cool, really different cards.
Yeah.
So when they do package them in, here's a legend, all of the cards fit in its color identity, it really feels like there's no wasted space in these.
Yeah. I really enjoy that approach to layers.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to build Carador based on this secret layer?
Probably 5. The reason why is just because it's so unfortunate because like the art is superb, but when you look at the archetype of what Carador is supposed to be, which is like a graveyard deck, you just have so many stronger options that are a lot newer. It's unfortunately that power creep.
Hmm.
Like I could sacrifice the white and add in a blue, and then I can build the thingy, the grave tide, Muldrotha. I could build
Hmm.
Muldrotha. And I'm like, cool, that's gonna give me consistent graveyard interaction because I can cast multiple things. Whereas with Carador, it's only during each of my turns I may cast a creature spell. I'm even limited by the type as well. So it's like,
Yeah, even in Abzan, there are some other Abzan legends that can build graveyard decks around them
mm.
that might even do it better. Look at Nethroi, Apex of
Oh
Death,
yeah, that's
too.
true. Nethru's a good one.
And yes, this is a commander that is 10 years old, over 10 years old
Yeah.
at this point now, which doesn't mean that it's been completely outclassed, but
Mhm.
there's been so many legends released between then and now that we're spoiled for choice.
Yeah, exactly. I think if we were limited in our options, I would be more inclined to build this because no matter what, even if you're like Chase, you're forced to build this, I wouldn't be upset because no matter what, this card is almost always going to cost you 3 mana. Almost always. You're never going to pay the 8 unless you're desperate.
Right. Unless you have messed up in how you've built the deck,
Mhm.
this is a commander that, regardless of commander tax, is always going to cost you 3 mana.
Exactly.
All right. So the next drop in this series is Ravina Kai.
Mhm.
This one is very interesting because these don't look like magic cards at all. This
Mhm.
is as far from anything traditional as we've seen. With the last 3 sets that we've taken a look at, we at least get some of the traditional magic frame
Mhm.
to them. We get the names, we get the mana values, we get the card types. On this drop, these look as far from magic cards as you get. How do you feel about these?
I love these, but I'm salty about this drop because I wasn't able to get my hands on them because of the way that layers are nowadays, um, which makes me feel so frustrated. So I wasn't able to get this one, even though this was like probably on the top of my list. And so now I'm trying to figure out if I can swing $50 on an arcane signet, when the whole layer itself was like what, 40. It's stuff like that. I love this. I do agree with you that it's very, very far from like what a magic card's supposed to look like. To me, it still feels very similar because I don't know if we've seen Ravina Kai before. I'm almost certain we have. Um, but if not, there's very similar art that we've seen depicted in cards. Even the frame makes me think of like the Strixhaven Mystical Archive frames.
Hmm.
And I like that even though it doesn't really look like a magic card, we can still read it clearly. Because there's been some issues in the past where we've had, issues trying to read or decipher what a card is. And this I can clearly tell. And I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think Wizards, with some of the feedback on some of the past Secret Layers and their legibility,
Mm,
have really made some strides towards the accessibility of new printings
mhm,
here, just in terms of readability, in terms of parsability. These might not look like traditional Magic cards, but they contain all of the information that you're looking for. You just got to look in different areas for them.
mhm.
I don't think they're unreadable by any stretch.
Yeah, I agree.
But this drop does give us a reprinting, a very interesting reprinting
Mm,
of Inala Archmage Ritualist.
yeah.
This is one of the maybe most controversial set of commander precons in from they're from the Eminence series
Mhm,
of commander precons. And Eminence is the ability for these commanders to have an effect while sitting in the command zone, not even being in play.
mhm.
Uh, how do you feel about seeing this reprinted?
Here's the deal. Eminence has no haters. I'm dead. It was because we have like that new like, knight, the Esper Knight, and that's obviously like nerfed to a T. But you can see why it is because before that card was printed, I was like, Eminence was a mistake. Eminence was a mistake. It flies in the very face of what Commander is. And when I say that, I don't mean like I'm offended by it. I'm saying that to have something designed that goes against the core mechanic of the format feels so weird
Mhm.
because there's no reason genuinely to cast an Eminence commander. You can just leave it in there unless you really need a body. There's no reason. And so to me, I'm like, you know, but we've seen Eminence commanders reprinted as a lair. Actually, I think only maybe one, which was the Ur Dragon, unless I'm missing one. But and Erebos. Erebos was also one of them. But like Inala herself, in my opinion, is the weakest out of the original four they did. Fun fact, I remember pre-ordering this as a set with my friends in college, and I chose Inala, and I forever hate Inala because I'm like, man, I could have had Edgar Markov, and I chose this one. I was so mad at myself. Like Future Chase is just like screaming at Past Chase. I'm like, man. But all in all, I'm like, it's nice to see it get such a beautiful treatment. Like, even though I'm not a fan of the commander, I don't even hate it. I just don't think it's particularly strong. I'm like, it's so beautiful. I'm okay with
Yeah.
it.
I think it's really interesting that you say that this is the weakest of the Eminence set because
Mhm.
this is the only Eminence commander that has a viable CDH build around it. So arguably, it's one of the strongest here.
I mean, too, that's fair. But then again, I don't really play CDH. And in all honesty, in CDH, you don't really need much to like explode. You breathe and something pops off. So like I won't, do that to like a fault. But like from my perspective, when I purchased this pre-con, back when I was in college and I played it, I remember being like, I'm so mad that I chose this one because I hated the deck. I was so upset with it. So it's just stuff like that. But yeah, it is definitely good if you're like, especially if you're like a CDH player, which I think goes to show you the difference in audience. Because like for someone like me who's strictly casual, this might not be the layer for me. But if you're a CDH player and you want that gorgeous piece for your prized deck, this is perfect for you.
Yeah, and considering the other pieces in it, Arcane Signet, Aether Vial, Sword of the Animist, they're all artifacts. We talked about Secret Layers potentially wasting cards if you aren't using them.
Hmm.
If you aren't going to be using an Aether Vial or a Sword of the Animist in your CEDH deck, you're damn well going to be using an Arcane Signet.
Yeah,
And since Aether Vial and Sword of the Animist are artifacts, you can use them in any other commander deck that you're running them into. I think that this really does speak to players like us, hardcore commander players, that would pick this up, use some of the pieces in one deck, some of the pieces in another deck.
yeah.
But again, there's no wasted energy here.
I agree. I think like this is again, I know that there are a lot of people who are out there who are like, this is the millionth time we've seen Arcane Signet printed as a lair. And that is true. And I did complain about like legendary creatures. But like Arcane Signet, it goes into everything. Literally everything. So like when you get those kind of layers, I'm not mad because yeah, we've had Soul Ring printed in layers a million times, but I'm never gonna be like, man, this card sucks. It's great. So of course I'm gonna put it, into XYZ. So like stuff like this, I do really enjoy.
Yeah, they could do a secret layer that is 4 different Arcane Signet treatments and I would be interested in it.
They
They
did
could
do
do a
that with
secret,
Serum Visions. They did that
right?
with Serum Visions ages ago.
Well, give me 4 different treatments of a soul ring. Give me
Mhm,
4 different treatments of an arcane signet.
mhm.
And those would be secret layers that I would be very interested in because I need a soul ring for every deck. I need an arcane signet for every deck. I don't necessarily need 4 serum visions, but give me these ones that are versatile.
I also think, like, from the perspective of other formats, how cool would it be to get a Secret Lair printing, of a playset of a staple card for your legacy deck or your modern deck? I think that'd be actually really cool. I know that we haven't really seen a return to that. The last one, I think we got of 4 of the same, and I hope people correct me if I'm wrong with the Thalias. We got 4 of the
Mhm.
same Thalia, just different art. I really wanna see more of that because, like, I have a friend now who is playing Thalia because she got reprinted in Standard, and so he's using that special Secret Lair art because he loves it so much. And it's like it's cool to get that for yourself because like as a commander player, I think everything's for me. But it's nice to see things for other people too. So
Yeah, and I think that that's really interesting because I was just having a chat with a player who was playing in Pro Tour Outlaws of Thunder Junction,
mhm,
and that came up in terms of mismatching art for your play sets and how it's actually a very high competitive edge to have all of your arts match
mhm,
on your cards, all of your printings match on your cards, which is one of the reasons why competitive players aren't necessarily looking for a secret layer that has 4 different arts
mhm,
of the same card. They might want 4 of the same arts of the same card
mhm.
so that they can be consistent in their deck. But that's just one of the things that speaks to us as commander players.
Yeah.
Hey, give us 4 different arts. I'll include them in 4 different
Yeah,
decks.
we like variety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So, scale of 1 to 10, based on this secret layer, how likely are you to build Inala?
3. I love the art for Nala. I love the art for this. I love the sword. I love the art for Nala, and I like the arcane signet. Aether Vial is an interesting one for me. I don't see that pop up in Commander too often. That doesn't mean it doesn't. And I still to this day despise Anala's design. And I would not want to play her again.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned other formats, and Aether Vial is an all-star in modern.
Mhm.
There's Death and Taxes that plays it. There's Modern Merfolk that plays it.
Mhm.
So, hey, again, release a drop that is 4 of the same art of a card that's a staple in a format,
Mhm.
and you know that you're going to have those players snap it up. That's for
Yeah.
sure. All right. So that's those are all the legends in the Equinox Super Drop. Let's jump over to the Spring Super Drop
Mm.
that has recently been announced, and let's start with maybe one that is the most head scratching of these secret layers, these universes beyond the Hatsune Miku crossover.
Yeah. In all honesty, when I saw that, I was like, I knew this was going to happen. I don't think anyone is surprised that we got this because I know when we had Neon Dynasty, they did a collaboration with Hatsune Miku, and I'm like, it's only a matter of time. I'm
Mhm.
surprised it took this long, actually. Um, I like this layer because we get so many cards. However, um, all the references are lost on me. I had somebody explain to me why Harmonize was included in here. But to me, from a perspective of someone who knows nothing about Miku, this layer seems disjointed to me.
Yeah, we talked about the overlap of the cards in the layer versus the legends in
Mhm.
the layer, and this one is a Naya colored super drop,
Mhm.
or sorry, a Naya colored drop. But there are 2 different legends in it, neither of which are Naya in and of themselves.
Yeah.
We have Miku Lost But Singing, which is Azusa Lost But Seeking, and Miku the Renowned, which is Feather the Redeemed.
Yeah.
So in the end, we do have Naya colored legends in this deck, but not one legend that is Naya colored.
Yeah, it seems like with this, the cards, it almost feels like they could have like edged this into 2 different drops because, Miku Spark, which is Chandra's Ignition, Shelter, Inspiring Vantage, and Feather all make a very strong feather
Mhm.
package. And then Azusa is just kind of chilling there, and Harmonize is like is it's just chilling there too. And I feel like they could have taken, Miku Lost But Singing, took it out and expanded upon it and have it be like a second sort of like legendary drop, which I think is interesting. I will also note to people that this is another layer where we see repeats of Lairs. So we already had an Inspiring Vantage Lair printing in one of the Doctor Who sets, and Azusa has also received a Secret Lair printing as well.
Right. So this might be one where we're seeing a lot of reprints of reprints
Yes.
of reprints, which detracts people from actually finding anything new or
Mm.
resonating with it. Now, this might be targeted more towards the Hatsune Miku
Oh, of
fan
course.
base
Yeah, totally.
than anything. Not necessarily towards the commander player that's never seen these cards before or
Mhm.
hasn't been able to get their hands on them before. But it does speak to, do we need another version of this? Is
Yeah.
there something that would have fit better or fit differently into this to
Yeah.
make it more interesting to enfranchise players like you or I?
Yeah, I think that this one for me, if I was like being critical of them, this is the one I would probably be the least critical of just because like I am very ignorant of this IP to a point where I'm like, I just don't know any of the references whatsoever. And so when I was like, Harmonize feels weird, someone was like, that's the name of the song that they did a collaboration with. And I'm like, thank you. Because I love that. And very well, Shelter could be a song, and I have no clue. So like I agree. I think a reason why I feel so like particularly kind of like salty about Feather is because Feather Feather got like a new variation, and so like this is like the old variation of Feather. And so it's just it feels like a step, I don't know, it just feels like a step back. I think the art is great for this. This is definitely for the Miku fans, but this one ain't for me.
Yeah, I am with you. We've seen Azusa reprinted a few times, whether it's in Secret Layers or not. This
Mhm.
is not the first time that we've seen Feather printed either.
Mhm.
These are cards that are plentiful, or legends at least that are plentiful.
Yeah.
I won't speak too much on Chandra's Ignition. That's actually a good pull
That's a need.
from
That
this
was a
one.
need. That was a need for us, I think.
Absolutely. But Azusa and Feather, not really exciting legends to see reprinted.
Yeah.
So let's get your score on the Azusa reprint. Scale of 1 to 10. How likely would this secret layer be to get you to build?
I would say a 0. Not because I hate it, but just because, like, this is such a specific niche IP that I look at it and I'm like, "Okay, where's the other layer?" Unfortunately.
And can the same be said for Feather here too? This layer just does not spark joy.
Weirdly enough, I would put the feather at a 1 because, like, I like the art on that feather a lot, but I still can tell that that's Hatsune Miku, and I'm like, "That's not for me." But, like, I really think the art on that one is kind of stunning. So it's a 0 and a 1.
All right. So the next one that's up is the Outlaws Anthology Volume 1.
Mhm.
This is another really interesting one, and there are two legends in this and two planeswalkers in it.
Mhm.
The first legend is Grenzo Havoc Razor, which is one that, again, we've seen a couple of printings of, especially just recently in, I believe it's the Blame Game precon
I think
out
so
of
too.
Murders at Karlov Manor,
Mhm.
because it's the goad oriented precon and he's a
Mhm.
legend that goads. I love this art though, this like pulp novel style cover art.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this one?
I love the art. I really like the art style of this. It's giving to me very much, ye old spaghetti western movie poster. I like it. It's very actiony, very action oriented. I also really love that even though it's a very unique, even like text treatment for the names of the commanders, it is so easily identifiable as to what it is.
Mhm.
The letters are clear, the mana value is clear. I think the art's super amazing. So I really like that one. I am a little bit bummed that you said that it was recently reprinted in a pre-con. So this layer I feel like is definitely for like the person who has a Grenzo deck that they love and wants to make it a little more special.
Yeah, I think that that's exactly who this is targeted towards.
Mhm.
You already have a Grenzo deck. Why not? And
Mhm.
of course, there's another Nico Bolas printing in this drop too.
Yeah.
And naturally, the Nico Bolas fan club here is going to pick up this drop for this version of the card,
Oh,
regardless of everything else in it.
the art's perfect. Like I look at that art, that Nicol Bolas art, and I think perfection. In all honesty, this particular Bolas art Makes me think of Eric Klugalter's. Like Eric did a an interesting one for Ulamog where it's kind of like those like 50s posters for horror movies, like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman or whatever. I'm
Hmm.
very much getting the same thing from this bolus art, and I genuinely have zero complaints about the art. I think the art's perfect. It's so pretty.
Speaking of the art, how do you feel about the cowboy hat on Tezzeret?
I actually think that's kind of funny. So I know that a lot of people have had very big complaints about OTJ because it's basically like, familiar face with hat. And while like there's a handful of that I will agree, I just think there's something so cool with Tezzeret about that, especially because like they could have just put like a boring cap on him, but they made his a hat out of I think Ethereum, and I think that's really cute. I like it. I think it's fun. I will say that this is also yet another card that has seen a Secret Lair printing.
Hmm.
But this is so starkly different. So I think it's interesting to have that variety. And again, this is also a pretty pricey card that I'm not mad that it got another reprint. I also think it's kind of perfect. I think it's great.
All right, so let's talk about the sore thumb in this drop, though.
Yeah.
We've got a printing of Grizzlebrand
Yeah.
in this one. Grizzlebrand, notoriously banned in Commander card.
Mm.
So for what is now the majority of the Magic playing audience, this is an entirely dead card. How do you feel about that one? How do you feel about yet another Grizzlebrand printing?
So for me, it's so interesting because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the original Secret Lair Grizzlebrand printing was in that Liliana's contract one, correct?
That's right.
Which it's in itself was a package. So it was really interesting to see Grizzlebrand pop up in like a WinCon package and a flavor. Like it was definitely a flavorful edition, don't get me wrong. And like I like seeing it here and I don't. And so the reason why is because again, this is banned in Commander. But it's legal in other formats too. And so, as a Commander player, I'm like, that's a dead slot. But for somebody else, it very much is the opposite. Um, which kind of makes me go back to why isn't this made for me? But like it's such a bummer because it's like if I'm in like a jail cell and like you're dangling the key like 2 feet in front of me, it's like, man, I want this thing so bad, but I'm not being able to grab it. It's like if I could play him in Commander, it would be this version because I think it looks so amazing. But at the same time, I 1,000% agree with and understand why it is banned in Commander. So
Absolutely. I don't think anybody is arguing that this should be unbanned in Commander. You mentioned other formats, and it is interesting because there are other formats that do play Grizzlebrand as one or two offs
mhm,
in decks, like
yeah.
through the Breach decks, for instance. Love playing Grizzlebrand to refill their hands,
Mhm.
get a quick swing through for 7 flying life linking damage. Card's busted. Don't get me wrong. And they might appreciate having a fancy printing of Grizzlebrand to include in, say, their modern decks or their
Yeah.
legacy decks, whatever it might
Yeah.
be. Uh, I think for Commander players, again, that make up a large part of the audience that they're trying to cater to here. You are essentially paying for 4 cards and getting 3 usable ones.
Yeah, it's I'm really glad that you said that because like nowadays we completely understand that Commander is like a very very huge pinnacle within Magic in itself, and that's more often than not how people are introduced to the format. And so for that, I agree because it is essentially a dead card. And that breaks my heart because again, we could have had it go towards another legend that desperately needed,
Mhm.
some revitalizing. It also makes me sad because I look at the art and I think of that Squidward meme where he goes, "Oh no, he's hot." It's like they really just made this man shirtless with abs and won't let us play him as a commander. How dare?
There's no reason that this couldn't be, say, a Razaketh instead.
Ooh, yeah. A Razaketh, or honestly, it didn't even have to be a demon. We could do it
Mhm.
just it could be something completely different. A really well-loved, viable commander, I think, that for some reason is not coming to mind right now. But to those who are listening and watching, your favorite commander would have been this choice for this. And imagine how cool that would have been.
Think of the lost potential here. That could have been insert your name here.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So on the Grenzo front, the Grenzo Havoc Razor front, how likely is it that this drop would make you build around Grenzo?
Unfortunately, a 1. I don't think it's a bad card. I don't think it's a bad art. It's just I look at the ability and it doesn't really spark joy. Actually, I'll put it up to a 2 because the art really, I think, just puts it in such a great place. I have seen Grenzo decks before, particularly this one, so I know that this will be loved and have many a home. But it doesn't inspire me. And even then, this is one that if I would buy it, I would actually probably put it on my wall because I think it's just beautiful, visually stunning.
Nice. I would love to get the full size, oversized cards version of this and put this up on
Oh,
the wall. Wouldn't
yeah.
that be great?
That'd be so good, actually, especially for like the bolus one. Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. Now, okay, thought experiment here.
Mhm.
Say Grizzlebrand isn't banned in Commander. How likely would this drop be to have you build around Grizzlebrand?
I say that it would probably have me at I'm gonna say like a 6. And the reason
Yeah.
why I say is because it to me represents the true meaning of Commander. And when I say that, I mean ignoring everything. It is a legendary creature that's just like badass. It has an insane mana value and a weird ability. And I
Yeah.
like that. I like that because only in Commander can you take something that's like 13 mana and be like, I'm gonna like do something with this. I think that's fun. And I probably like if Grizzleband was never banned and I had never seen this card and you showed this to me today, I'd be like, I'm investing because I think it's just so weird. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So we've got the second part of this drop, the Outlaw Anthology Volume 2. This one's a real winner for us as Commander players because it's got
Yes.
4 legends in it.
Yes.
4 good legends at that, too.
Mhm.
So the first one up is Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger. I know you're a big Vorinclex fan.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Totally.
looks back at giant Vorinclex behind you.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this printing of Vorinclex?
I'll say this. Again, we're at a spot where I'm like the art, absolute perfection. I love it. I love it. I love how interactive it is. It's stunning. I think it puts you in a certain place. I also love the text with it. However, I'm going to be old man shouting at clouds right now and say this is yet again another example of a card that has been previously printed in a lair before getting another lair treatment. I will say I'll give this one a little bit of slack because the original printing, the Secret Lair printing has the original printing art and is just with Phyrexian text and a Phyrexian border. So like a little bit, but if I'm being honest, I would have much rather preferred to get the Vorinclex, the monstrous one, because
Yeah.
that one is in desperate need of a reprint in some shape, form, or fashion.
We actually saw reprintings of both Vorinclex's Voice of Hunger and Monstrous One in All Will Be One.
Mm.
So this is in a year's span because All Will Be One came out just last year. For those of you that thought it was 7 years ago, where we saw another treatment of each of these legends too. So Vorinclex Voice of Hunger, not only has it been in another Secret Lair drop, but it was also in the collector booster step and complete treatments.
Yeah,
In
the concept art treatment too. I got the
Yeah.
concept one.
yeah, so lots of printings. This is a legend where, granted, this treatment, this art is fantastic.
Mhm.
We've seen this Vorinclex printed like what 5-6 times now.
Yeah, a lot.
Detracts a little bit from it.
Mhm.
Now the next legend in this drop though is Corona False God.
Yeah.
This is to me this is the pinnacle of what should be printed in these Secret Lairs
Mhm.
because this is a legend from Scourge, way back in Scourge. I believe it was Scourge or Legions, one or the other. That a lot of people have never ever seen before.
Yes. Yes.
How do you feel about this Corona printing?
I'm so happy to see it. And I'm going to explain why. I think it's so perfect. And I agree with you. This is kind of like the pinnacle of it because Corona, while being a very old card, is still pretty financially accessible, except for when you look at the foil. And the foiling is, I think, like $70, which is pretty pricey for.
Which I happen to have one.
Okay, well, listen, not all of us are rich. So, but like, I love seeing this because, again, this is kind of what feels like so commandery. It's an interesting, weird cost with a weird ability because you have to understand, like, this ability might feel very at home in 2024, but this is weird to see in
The
Scourge.
weirdest.
It's like, how do you do that? I like it. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting. It needed a reprint. It needed some life breathed into it. The art, and it's kind of one of those original like 5-color commanders, that was only available, you know, in the very beginning of Commander, except for like Progenitus. So like when you have like this and Progenitus, you're like, one of these feels a little more easier to tackle. So I think it's phenomenal. I love it.
Yeah, back in the beginning of Commander, I think there were only 4 or 5 color legends.
Yeah.
It was like the Sliver Queen, Chromat, Corona,
Yeah.
and Progenitus, and like
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have never seen this card before, and keep in mind that this was a card that was designed and printed before Magic and multiplayer were even a thought. So the fact that this is passed around to each player at the beginning of
Mhm.
each player's upkeep was such a weird concept back then. I remember playing standard back then, type 2 as it was called back then, and seeing a card like this and seeing, why would you ever hand this over to an opponent? Why would
Yeah.
you ever want to play this? But now with the pickup of Commander and how interesting it is to pass this kind of thing around,
Mhm.
doing something like goading Corona
Mhm.
and passing it around to each player is something that seems like a really fun concept that some people can sink their teeth into. I think that this is a fantastic printing.
I think so too. I think it also, shows that like with Corona especially, I really like that the wording is so specific because again, you would expect that in 2024, but back in Scourge, not really. And it says creatures of the creature type of your choice. It doesn't say that your opponents control or that player controls. So you could, be like, okay, I'm gonna buff all of my stuff +3/+3 if I'm in like a whatever typal deck, and then suddenly I have a big beefier wall to protect myself. It's stuff like that. And especially when you think about it from the perspective of taking something really old and presenting it to like, like a fresher generation of magic, I think this sparks that interesting like, okay, well, how can I make this work? And I
Mhm.
really like that. And to have an accessible foil, I think is also very important too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the third legend in this drop is Corvold Fey Cursed King.
Yes.
Another very strong one, another one that people love building around. What do you feel about this printing?
So this one's very interesting to me. Corvold is often listed as one of the most hated commanders, one of the saltier commanders. I don't disagree. Corvold decks are pretty oppressive. I'm not gonna lie, but overall, again, this just lends to like eh, the art really can impact your perception of this. I'm not saying that the old art was like bad and made me hate it, but like this one, I'm like, well, maybe this guy isn't so bad after all, Like, I think this is really great. Corvold has had a handful of printings, a very small handful. I think he had his original Eldraine printing, maybe one more printing, and then past that, he got a Year of the Dragon printing.
Mhm.
And that one is, to my knowledge, a little bit harder to access for people unless you're willing to like pay a pretty penny. Which, like again, with a premium, that is what it is. Having this, I think, is really cool because again, you get to have that special art, that special treatment, and like that. If you were a Corvold player and you wanted that fancy version, the only fancy version you had was like maybe a pre-release foil. Actually, not even that. I don't even think it's a pre-release foil, just a foil. And
Mhm.
then the Year of the Dragon. And that's it. And so again, you add to this. So I love it.
Yeah. And because Corvold was one of the box legends in the Brawl decks
Yes.
from the original Eldraine, for the longest time, the only printing you can get of Corvold was a foil version of it.
Mhm.
So that's interesting because, much like the flip side of Corona, where you say getting accessible copies of foil versions of Corona is a
Mhm.
good thing, getting accessible copies of non foil versions of Corvold is a good thing too.
See, this is going to show you how much I pay attention to Corvold because I knew he was in the Brawl decks, but I forgot that those were only in foil.
Yeah.
I just forgot. So, oops. But like at the same time, like there are some people out there who don't like foils. And while I don't understand those people, it's nice that they can get a different version of that in a non-foil as well.
Fantastic. And this is another one that is a very strong commander in that there are CDH brews
Yes.
around Corvold too. So there's a lot of usability here. Either, hey, I just want them for in the 99 of my dragon deck,
Hmm.
or I want to build a deck around Corvold. There are a lot of uses for this printing.
it's just something else. I think that out of the entire super drop that we're talking about, these two are some of the stronger ones.
Agreed. Now there is a fourth one in this drop, and that
Hmm.
is Memnarch.
Yeah.
Memnarch is another one that a lot of players have never seen before. Not exactly a popular legend,
Hmm.
not exactly an accessible legend, but an interesting one nonetheless.
I think this one is so interesting to see because it's had a handful of printings. And when I say handful, I mean it's had 3 printings. All of it with the same art. And let me tell you, the art's not bad. I really find it to be iconic and stuff. But when you have such an art like this, you really get a capture of a detail that you weren't able to see in the original art, which I think is really, really important. I love that for us. I
Mhm.
like that. Again, you have a easily accessible foil. You have something presented to newer players. And I mean, like Memnarch's a disgusting, disgusting, disgusting commander. And while, this might sound like a little like as a read, and I don't mean it to be, but like when I see the original printing of Memnarch, let's do the original printing and then like the dual deck version. If you held those up to me, I can see it, but my eyes just kind of like glaze over it. Like I see it
Mhm.
and I understand that it's a card, but I don't understand that it's like a powerful commander, if that makes sense. Because the art is just so subdued and the border is so subdued.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this one, it's anything but, you know?
Yeah. This is definitely one that screams, this is the printing you want as your commander.
Yes.
For the 6 people that have Memnarch decks out there, they want to pick this up in particular because this is the hands down best printing of this legend. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned, the other printings have been the exact same art, have been the exact same treatments. There's been nothing exciting about them. This one is the first time those few Memnarch players get something interesting.
There's only one variation, and even then it's a contentious one because Memnarch got printed, and I think in From the Vault lore, and people either adore that foiling or they hate it. And so
Hmm.
like having it either be like here's a non-foil with a sick art or a regular foil with a sick art. There's no like weird little like, backflip to it. I think that also adds to its allure. It's just, pretty chill.
Yeah. Memnarch is another great one that's fine in the 99 as it is at the lead of a deck. I
Mhm.
think making it the commander of a deck is a specific direction and choice for the deck that you want to build.
Mhm.
Putting it in the 99 gives you a little bit more versatility and lets you do some more things with them. But either way, I think that you're going to find a use for this card.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's go through these 4 and get your score out of 1 to 10.
Mhm.
So Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, scale of 1 to 10. How likely are you to build around him?
2.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
The ability's not bad. I love the art. It's just I've done green decks before and I don't wanna go back to it.
All right. All right. So Corona False God, scale of 1 to 10. How likely are you to build around Corona?
I would say probably 7.
Ooh, okay. Up
Yeah,
there. Up there.
definitely.
Okay. Then the Corvold printing. How likely would you be to build around Corvold?
Probably 5.
All right.
Yeah.
And then finally Memnarch for this drop.
I'm gonna be so for real, even though the art is stupendous and perfect and I think supreme, I'm gonna say 1 because I know for a fact the mental gymnastics you have to do to make Memnarch be disgusting. I just don't wanna deal with that. I don't wanna deal with the painter's servant, Pili Pala, whatever. I don't wanna think that hard. I don't. I don't wanna do it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's not my style for the kind of deck that I want to build around. But again, I can definitely see Memnarch in the 99 rather than as a lead.
Oh, he's phenomenal. I love it.
Okay. So the next up in this drop is the showcase wanted posters for Outlaws of Thunder Junction. So
Yeah.
this is what we were talking about. This is taking a standard style format, like the wanted posters that we see in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and applying them to other cards that this makes sense for.
Yeah.
And we've got 3 interesting legends in here. We've got the first one, Cletus, Trader of Get. How do you feel about Cletus here?
I love Cletus. I love Cletus. I think he needed a reprint. He needed one so desperately. Um, I will say, I'm like, that meme where it's like, Ariana, what are you doing here? I'm like looking at him and I'm like, this is such a weird guy to put on this kind of border. But I'm not mad at it. I think the art of it from what we see is beautiful, and I think he needed a reprint so bad. So I'm just happy to see him, in attendance.
Yeah, this is another one that is great in the 99 of a lot of decks.
Mm,
I've seen Cletus played in modern decks as well as a way to shut down some graveyard strategies too,
yeah.
which is very interesting. So I think that there's a lot of use for this one, even if he's not going to be at the lead of a commander deck anytime soon.
Yeah.
The next one in the drop is Magda Brazen Outlaw.
Mhm.
This one, a fan favorite
Yeah.
out there. Really interesting to see it in this frame. What do you think?
I think it's great. Magda's a very popular commander, especially even when you look at the price of the commander, you're like, well, she's not that much money, but like a foil of her is a little bit up there. And so, like, again, providing people a foil treatment is nice. I like this also too, because again, I like the wanted posters for commanders. And you really do see her pop up, I think, pretty equally as a commander and as a piece in the 99. It's just strong. You can't go wrong with this piece. I don't like the art,
Mm,
um, but that's like my only complaint.
yeah.
I'm really happy to see her.
Yeah, Magda is another one that shows up a lot in CEDH2.
Mhm.
Some tournament topping decks starring Magda. So it's great for those CEDH players to get a copy of Magda in a fancy printing, fancy frame for their decks.
Mm.
But I agree with you. The art on this one misses me. It's very similar to the rule book arts from the Dungeons and Dragons sets, in my opinion. There's a little bit more color here, but it's kind of that sketchy line art style that just doesn't resonate with me.
I was gonna say that the art reminded me of the art we see in like the Invincible comic.
Oh, Ryan
Like
Otley's art.
I
Oh, I
look
love that.
I don't like it. I look at the comic art and I'm like, I don't like how this looks. So
No, I'm a big fan of the art style in comic books. I mean, I'm a comic book nerd. You
yes.
might be able to see the comic book stuff behind me here.
Mhm.
But this one, I think, not quite too comic booky that it resonates with me. Again, I think it looks more like the rule book art from the
Yeah.
D&D sets, which is a little flat for my liking, especially in a fancy printing like this.
Yeah, the colors are actually pretty subdued on a lot of these.
Mhm.
They almost look like they're like they took the saturation and they desaturated the colors a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll see that on the next one here, Greasefang, Okiba Boss. And
Mhm.
let me just say, Rat Gang, Rat Gang, Rat Gang. I got to give that one out to the Rat Gang out there.
Yeah.
But Greasefang showing up here, like you mentioned, this one's kind of washed out from an art standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, like, I have it pulled up in like a very high def version. So like I get to see the detail from that. But like again, when it's sized down in such like a small frame, eh, you know? Um, I'm not gonna lie, this is one of those cards in a layer where I'm like, it could have been so great to have literally like any other card. Because Greasefang is definitely a relatively new commander, but here's the deal. It's one of those niche commanders. You cannot really take it into another level. It is what it is. It is a vehicle commander, and there it is. And vehicles, in my opinion, aren't pretty popular. And so like when you have such like a an archetype that isn't too terribly well beloved, and a very specific commander for that archetype, you can't help but feel a little bit like, I really wish this could have been like something else.
Mhm. Yeah, interestingly, I as far as I am aware, Pioneer has a few decks built around Greasefang
Yeah.
too. So there is some other formats that would appreciate a card like this as well.
Mm.
There, of course, is the very dedicated player that has a commander deck built around Greasefang too. So there's definitely home for it. There's definitely some demand for it, but I agree, a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you mean? There's no other formats. There's only one, and it's mine.
So I have one major gripe with this drop in particular,
Okay.
and that is that all of these are the, as they call it, the outlaws frame treatment here, the
Mhm.
wanted poster frame treatment.
Mhm.
None of these legends are actually outlaws.
I can see that being a gripe.
Yeah, so we have a warrior, a berserker, and a pilot. but none of those are outlaw creature types. So I understand how a trader, a brazen outlaw, and a gang boss
Yeah.
would have wanted posters of them.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't have the creature type that makes them an outlaw, like the ones that are in the set
Yeah.
Outlaws of Thunder Junction do.
Listen, their job description should not dictate whether they can or cannot commit acts of theft or larceny or arson, in my opinion. But I see that and I agree.
In any way, they are all wanted in one way or another.
Mhm.
So let's go quickly through this. Scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to build Kalitas?
I would say 5. I think the
Uh,
art really does it for me on this one, honestly.
yeah, it is. It is really grimy. I like
Yeah,
that a
I
lot.
do. Yeah.
How about Magda? Scale of 1 to 10.
1, it's the art. It's the art. The border, it's not even the border that takes over. It's just how washed out and rough the art looks, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair. And how about Greasefang?
I'm gonna say 1 because I despise vehicles. I'm like, I don't want to I don't want to deal with it. It's not even the fact that there's cars and magic. It's just that I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's entirely fair.
Yeah.
The next drop though is my favorite out of both of these super drops.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Equinox super drop and the Spring super drop. It is the poker faces.
Yeah. I love the poker faces. I love this one so much.
Yeah, this is hands down my favorite. This art style, this treatment, this kind of playing card style is my absolute favorite. This is, if there was a drop that was made for me, it is this one. I like
Yeah.
it so much. And we got 2 legends in this one.
Mhm.
The first, near and dear to my heart, it's my girl Jaxis the Troublemaker.
Mhm.
How do you feel about this?
It's one of those ones that I'm like, really her? Like I just feel so bad because like I look at that commander just only from the perspective of commander and I'm like I feel boredom. It's just the design to me didn't do much. She was the box top promo for that set and typically the box top promos aren't exactly super awesome powerful pieces. So like she kind of feels like a random like cheap card that they threw in, which makes me so sad. I would have loved to have seen literally anything else other than Jaxus. I'm so sorry, Chris.
Hey, look, you wound me personally, but I
Yeah,
understand where you're coming from.
I'm so sorry.
Tell me though, how do you feel about a legend
Mhm.
with a text box as dense as Jaxus being a textless card?
I'm gonna be so for real. I know people get bothered by that. I don't care. I don't care because you can always run the original version of it for sure. But like at the same time, even if we look at the before times before there were Secret Lairs, they made Cryptic Command a textless promo. At that point, like that they signed off on confusing cards being textless years ago. It's nothing new. This isn't a recent thing. It does not matter to me because I can quickly, do a little tip tap on Scryfall and be like, here, that's what it says.
Yeah. And when they released the textless Omnath Locus of Creation as well, you know that Wizards was just trolling us
Yeah.
in terms of what they're willing to do textless.
Yeah, they're like, memorize it or look it up. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, go buy 2 copies of this.
Yeah.
Have one to show people, and you can use the the textless one.
Yep.
Uh, Now the second legend in this drop is Rankle, Master of Pranks.
Hmm.
This one's very interesting. You and I were talking about this one before we
Yes.
went live too. Tell me your feelings on this.
I like this. I think Rankle is one of those cards that, I see pop up a lot in Commander, mostly as a piece in the 99, but I also see him pop up as a commander from time to time. He's a strong commander. He's an annoying commander. I think the art is great. My biggest issue with this is it's not a Secret Lair double printing, but it was printed as a card in the OTJ Recon. So we
Mhm.
literally just got it. And so like it's definitely not like we're reprinting this for accessibility or we're reprinting a very popular commander. It's just like, this is a card that we're reprinting here. And if you have the deck vibes is kind of the energy I'm getting, which breaks my heart because I think it looks, amazing.
Yeah. Again, the art style on this one is great. I do like that the entire drop is either red cards or black cards to go with the suits
Yeah.
of a deck of cards. I think that is fantastic. But like you mentioned, did we need another Rankle printing?
No.
Not at all.
I'll also say I think it's funny that they also chose to print a legendary creature with a modal ability.
Yeah.
Textless.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, they know exactly what they're doing right now when Wizards
Yeah.
is choosing cards for this. They want to put the most confusing cards with the most rules text on them on these textless ones because even Coffin Queen has a boatload of text on it
Yeah.
as well.
The
So
e
giving us a textless version is great.
the easiest one is Goblin King. Other goblins
Yeah.
you control get 1/1, and I think it's like they have Mountain Walk. That's easy. Everything else is like pulls out readers, squints,
Yeah.
sit down with a cup of coffee.
But for real, if I could make an entire commander deck that was made out of cards that looked like this,
Oh, I
I
would.
would in a heartbeat.
I would too. And I think it's also important to note that this is also very similar to something famous altarist Eric Klug has done many a time in the past. So like it's nice to kind of see that be printed as a lair for people because I love Eric Klug. And when I am rich, I will patronize him in a way that is me giving him money. But
Yep.
until then, it's nice to have this.
All right. So, scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to build Jaxus?
0. So sorry. I'm inventing my own number, but like I just think the card is so not good. And even then the art is a little like rough skis to me. The art feels kind of like a trace almost of the original art now that I'm looking at the face.
Oh, interesting.
Looks very similar.
See, this is a version of Jaxus that I would put in the 99 of any of my decks that
Yeah.
clone stuff.
If you run
Love it.
Jaxus, I would be running this one.
Yeah. And then how about Rankle, scale of 1 to 10?
I would actually say 5.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not intrigued by Rankle's abilities too terribly much. Like I've never considered him before, but there's just something so endearing about that like dumbass grin he has on his face and like again like the little bags and like his ability and he's a modal. I just think like it looks so precise that if someone handed this to me for free and they're like, "You want to build a deck around this?" I'd probably be like, "Yeah, sure."
Hell yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, this is my favorite drop out of all of them.
Yeah.
But this leaves us with one more to talk about, and this is probably my least favorite out of all of them. There are a lot of people saying this. This is the Sans Mercy drop, which is we were talking about Wizards kind of trolling us, making text list cards with massive text boxes on them.
Mhm.
Talk about a troll here because we get the Comic Sans Secret Lair here in Sans Mercy.
I here's the deal. We are no strangers to Wizards printing joke layers. They've printed, to my knowledge, 2. The one that was like greatest cards of all time, and I think that one didn't even. Some of them made it to print, not all of them. And then the secondary one is the left-handed Secret Lair, of which I have purchased and utilized many a time. This one is definitely a bit of a leap from those. I won't lie. I think that this is definitely probably one of the most contentious ones that we've seen. I would like it more if it was all lowercase. I don't like the mixture of lowercase and caps. That's like my weird opinion about it because the art is, I mean, like, come on, that art's perfect. But like,
yeah, this is the biggest waste of incredible art that I've ever seen. I understand why they do the uppercase and the lowercase. That's like typing in sarcastic on the internet.
I actually get Doge from that. You remember? It makes me think that the person who pitched this lair like hadn't seen internet memes since like the early 2000s and was like, those young people still enjoy Doge, with a little Shiba with like the little Comic Sans, because I swear to God, it's like Doge, and I'm like, come on,
Yeah.
don't do Doge.
It is very much like hey fellow kids internet meme.
Yeah,
I get that. But I also get like this is they printed Doomblade in it.
Love
to
that.
the dies to Doomblade memes.
Yeah.
Right? Or they printed land destruction and the flavor text on Ruination is ouchie wah wah, please don't cry. Like they knew exactly what they were doing.
It's giving corny. Like it's just like, especially like, I know I said this already, but like the flavor text for Massacre so reads Doge. Don't even. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't put the word heckin' in there. Oh no, I'm so scary, Raffle. I'm heckin' dying. Like I swear, it's giving early corny 2000s meme behavior, and like that's probably why I'm not gonna pick it up. But
Yeah, it's super cringe. I think we can all agree on that. But there is one legend in here that we
yeah,
need to talk about before we wrap up, and that is Mogus, God of Slaughter.
yes. Um, Mogus is an interesting addition to me. In my opinion, he's one of the more forgettable gods. But again, you have to understand it's just not my play style, so I don't really consider him too terribly much. I honestly don't even consider most of the dual colored ones. The ones I think of the most are going to be the monocoloreds. But the ability is good. The ability is there. I like again that this is sort of like a package layer. I don't know if these cards are typically put in a Mogus deck, but I mean his ability is very hateful, so it would make sense to run hateful cards such as these, which I like. I will also note that once again, Mogus is yet another card that has had a Secret Lair printing in the past. So
Mhm.
to me, a little up in the air. I don't know. I feel like this layer would have been taken a lot better had they done a different commander or a different legendary creature.
Yeah, and I think that this is again a massive waste of great art on a joke layer like this. I'd
Yeah.
like to see them release this layer again with a
Mm,
different treatment to it. Mogus, like you mentioned, has already had a secret layer drop. He's
yeah.
had the constellation drop, which I think is the definitive version
Yeah.
of each of the gods.
Yes.
So why do you need another version of it? But again, like we discussed earlier, this is another drop that has no wasted potential
Mhm.
to it. You aren't going to get this and then have cards that you aren't going to use in a deck around Mogus.
Yeah. I don't mean to pitch ideas for free, but of a joke layer that I think would have been funny and just the right amount annoying is do an inverse layer. So you have like I'm holding up a card you can't see, but like you have the art made to be only in the parameters of the black border, and you have all the text and everything else in the center taking up the center. I think that'd be so funny because it wouldn't be like, oh, you just take the art and then you just mask it. It's just like, no, the artist literally had to draw within the parameters of the border. I think that'd be funny. I think you would still get very interesting art and it'd be legible and confusing and dumb. I think this one more annoys people than it is like funny, haha. But that would be my attempt at a take at a joke secret lair.
Yeah, imagine the full text basic lands that they've done before. Again,
Mhm.
another joke, another meme
Yeah,
secret
that
layer,
there's that one too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the border is all art
I think
and
that's so
all the
cool.
text is in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's just so fun because like they've played with borders before many a time in the past, and I don't know. I think it wouldn't be that difficult to print either. I think it'd be hysterical. So
Yeah, I think so too. That'd be great. But again, I think the biggest miss on this one is the fact that the art is incredible
mhm,
and the treatment on it ruins this layer
mhm.
entirely, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
So, scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to build around Mogus?
I'm gonna put a 2. And the reason why is I love the art and I actually don't mind the Comic Sans. The thing that bothers me most is just the mix of like caps and lowercase. It's just it's loud for my eyes and I just don't want to look at it. I don't want to read it. I only want to look at the art. I want to like, have my eyes unfocused and just only look at the art. Um if it was all in lowercase, I'd probably put it up. I'm gonna be so serious. If it was all in lowercase, I'd probably put it up to like a 6.
Wow,
But
alright,
it's a
alright.
2 because I just hate looking at the words.
I get you on that one. So that is all of Q1 2024's Secret Layers at this point, or the
Mm.
first half of 2024's Secret Layers. Chase, thank you so much for joining me and going through all of these. I think that we've definitely found some winners in here, definitely some good drops that we've talked about, and definitely some legends that folks out there should pick up and brew around, especially if they've never seen them or never heard of them before. But
Yeah.
before we go, Chase, why don't you let everybody know where we can find you and maybe where we can read some of your articles about these secret layers?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love talking about layers and myself. If y'all don't know me, my name is Chase. I also go by Manicurves on the internet. You can find me everywhere, be that Napster, LinkedIn, Foursquare, MySpace. And I stream on Twitch. I post TikToks on TikTok, obviously, sometimes on Instagram too. I'm on Twitter chronically. And you can find my articles actually about this most recent drop on Star City Games.
Fantastic, Chase. Thank you so much for coming back always a pleasure. And for all of you out there, do stick around and check some of these out. All right, folks, be sure to let me know in the comments who you want to see on Let's Do a Brew next. And while you're here, check out these other episodes too. And if you were inspired to brew today, you have to hit that subscribe button. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. As always, folks, good luck and have fun.